Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining this month's Women of Innovation Spotlight webinar. The title of the presentation is Why Jumping Off or Getting Pushed Off the Train is Good for You. So it's going to be an action-packed presentation. I'm Elizabeth Durgan, committee co-chair for the Women of Innovation program. Now in its 17th year, the annual Women of Innovation program recognizes women and girl innovators, role models, and leaders in science and technology, including high school and collegiate levels of STEM talent pursuing technology professions. And you can read more about the program at womenofinnovation.org. You'll see that link later in the program. We'd like to take the time to thank our sponsors who make this program possible, including Medtronic, Arvinas, Pfizer, University of Connecticut, Sonalysts, the Jackson Laboratory, and other organizations and businesses in Connecticut. And if your organization is interested in supporting the 2022 Women of Innovation program, please contact us at events@ct.org. There will be a Q&A session immediately following the presentation. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time via the Q&A button on your webinar toolbar. Today's presentation is being recorded, and we will provide you with a link as well as the slide deck shortly after the webinar's conclusion. Now, I'm pleased to introduce the moderator for today's presentation, Jackie Garofano, Chief Technology Officer of the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology and a two-time Women of Innovation finalist.
Great, thank you so much, Elizabeth, and it's a pleasure to join all of you today. Women of Innovation is certainly a holds very dear to my heart, having been welcomed into this community back a decade ago as I was finishing up my collegiate career. And then after being a Connecticut native and very invested in the state of our Connecticut women in technology, it was on my bucket list to be recognized in another category during my professional career. And so I had, currently I am Chief Technology Officer at the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology. Prior to that, I had my career at Raytheon Technologies, so I'm thrilled to be able to have this conversation with Eileen today. She is Project Engineering Chief for Airframe and Global Engine Controls at Collins Aerospace. She's a 2021 Women of Innovation finalist in this large business category. She has a strong passion and willingness to explore the variety of opportunities in STEM for our youth in her spaces of technology, which she will get into. It's a really fascinating career that she's had a journey through in different technologies, from jet cells to fuel cells to radios, all of the things. So I'm really thrilled to be able to listen to Eileen's presentation and then join you back for some Q&A. So as Elizabeth shared, there is spots in either the chat or the Q&A to drop your questions and comments. And so with that, Eileen, I'll turn the program over to you.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Eileen Bartley, Chief Project Engineer at Collins Aerospace, and I want to welcome all of you to this presentation. I'm hoping that the presentation will be somewhat entertaining and provide you with a few things that I've learned along the way that maybe you can relate to and apply to your careers. So
Eileen, we just have to go out of presenter mode. So if you could just switch the view.
Okay. Let's do. I'm not quite sure how that works. Okay.
maybe in display settings, or you had, when you right clicked the hide presenter view, that might switch it over.
Ah, okay, there we go.
Oh, and now we lost your slide. So if you could try pulling it back in.
Sorry about this. Okay, let's try this. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, thanks everyone. So we'll get started. Hopefully this will, you can relate to a few of the things I've been through on your journey through your career as well. So this presentation is about change. A lot of change in your life is not necessarily under your control. So there's job assignments, organizational changes. I mean, very often these days, people take their careers in their own hands and make those changes. But, change is inevitable. You'll have relocations, family changes. Maybe you want to start your own business. You want to do something different and you just want to change. So this presentation will talk about a few of the changes that I've experienced, and perhaps you might as well. So I'll talk about my very first job. So I graduated in 1981, which probably seems like, dinosaur days to a lot of the people on the call. But at that time, I was one of the few women engineers that actually was graduating from the universities at that time with an engineering degree. So I was offered a position at the time. It was called Hamilton Standard, and they were working on the world's largest wind turbine. And the pictures kind of doesn't do it justice here, but the blades were tip to tip were as long as a football field. And prior to this time, no one had built anything close to this size. It was a great group. There was actually another female engineer already in the group, which was extremely rare. So I was so excited to be hired. And they even talked about perhaps if this they were demonstration programs. One was in Sweden and the other was in Medicine Bow, Wyoming. And if that was successful, then you know what? We were going to be installing them maybe all over the world and possibly Hawaii. So how good can that be? I mean, that was just, it was a dream come true. However, 6 months into the job, the financial crisis of the early 80s hit the program, and interest rates at that time shot up to 21%, and UTC decided they did not want to fund this. It was too risky. They could put their money into, CDs at 21%. So they basically downscaled the project. A few people remained on the team to follow it through, but many of us were reassigned, and I was one of them. Oops. So I was told I was joining the Propeller Team. So literally the people on that team looked just like that photograph. It was a group that was mainly World War II veterans, and they hadn't had a new product in probably 30 years. So I remember walking at that time there was a big, large open office area, and probably 200 maybe engineers all in this big office area, phones going off. And so I was told, okay, go upstairs and take your desk and they'll meet you up there. So I walked upstairs and every head turned in the place. And I just had this feeling that, oh my God, the boys club has been breached. So it was really something that I was probably 22 or so at the time. It was sort of a culture shock. So anyway, it turned out it was a great experience. I met some lifelong friends. I learned a lot about team. I was the first time I was actually on a really big team. It was a program that we were starting a new propeller that was a development program for a composite propeller used in a commercial aviation program. It was the de Havilland Dash 8. And I got to travel. It was really wonderful. During that time, I earned an MS in business, so I went to school at night. And so the takeaway on that experience was just, even when things don't necessarily weren't what you had planned, keep an open mind. Really embrace the team, get to know people and be part of the team. Learn everything you can, and, I'll say, look around for the people who are really effective and try to model their behavior. Sometimes that's, trying to be more inclusive, trying to ask opinions of people, but, there's a lot you can learn as being part of a team. Another thing I want to emphasize is getting trained in a new area. Is, like I went out for a master's degree in business. It was great to try to reach out and do a new area that you may be feeling a little uncomfortable about trying, but do it anyway, because those things are the things you really grow from. Also, volunteer for new assignments. Now, nobody, you're really busy in your job and it's like, oh, I just can't take on anything else. But volunteering is a good way to meet people in groups that you normally wouldn't always interact with, for one. And again, it's a learning opportunity. So I'll share a little bit about, I volunteered to be part of this cost reduction program, and nobody likes cost reduction. It's not, the engineers hate cost reduction. They always want to do the new, sexy new products, but cost reduction is like, okay, what do things cost? How can we shave off, a dollar here or there? So I joined the team, and it turned out that I started working on something called powdered metal to try to replace some metal components. And I ended up getting a patent from an idea that was tested. We had no idea that was going to work. And so again, just kind of takeaway there is, you never know what's going to happen. So try it out. And if it doesn't work out, you can always, just chalk it up to the experience. And also stay curious. Sometimes you find yourself in a little bit of a rut, you're doing the same thing and all that. Try to keep an open mind and be curious about things that you want to know a little bit more about, whether it's, if you're mechanical, maybe try to learn a little bit more about electrical design or materials or something. So stay curious in your approach to engineering. So again, time for a change. I was, at the time, my boyfriend and I, we weren't married. I eventually married him, but he became my husband. But he said, well, I got an opportunity in Boston, so we're moving. So packed up my things after about 6 years of that job and moved to Boston. So I was lucky to be hired by aircraft manufacturer GE Aircraft Engines in Lynn, Massachusetts. And worked on some really great stuff. Worked on some engine. I was in the engine accessory group. Worked on various different products. And the very first week I started at the company, we had a field issue. The engines were flaming out, and it happened to be the product I was assigned. So that was kind of exciting. Learned a lot about root cause analysis during that part of my career. So that was a good experience. I wanted to learn a little bit more about electrical side of engineering. So I started an MS in EE at Northeastern. And that decision really changed the trajectory of my career at that point. So I bought a house, got married, had a baby. So after about probably 5 years at that job, GE wanted to downsize, so I took an offer to get a buyout, and I got hired by a company called Amatec. And my role there was more in the design, as a design engineer. So I learned a new modeling. They wanted to do some ceramics that they needed to do finite element analysis modeling. So I learned that tool. So the takeaway from that experience was get to know your colleagues, make real connections with them, stand up for your principles. There were a few incidences where I was not really treated well, and don't stay silent. Just raise that up and say, this is not cool. And and I think people at the end of the day are glad people bring these things to the forefront and not hide it, because it just goes on if you don't stand up. And support other women in their career goals. There's so few women. There's more of us now, but you need to make sure that you reach out to others that may be newer in their careers as well. So again, time for a change. We're moving to Illinois, and I literally had no idea where Illinois was. I had to look on a map. So it was a career change for my husband, who said there was a great opportunity in Illinois. So off we were, moving to Illinois. So the location was in the Chicago area, and I took a lot of interviews, and I decided to take a job with Motorola. Now, Motorola at the time they were the only game in town with cell phones. And you can see the picture there. That was what everybody referred to as the brick. That was kind of the first cell phone that people had in their cars. And it was this big thing. I mean, it's hilarious looking at it now, because the cell phones today can fit in your hand, in your back pocket. But these were, state of the art back in the day. And Motorola was just, they were doing great. So I was hired to do this, to try to shrink what was called an ovenized oscillator to a much smaller package. And within the first week of getting hired, my manager decided he hated being a manager, so he wanted to quit. So they asked me to be the manager, and literally it was a week on the job. And the product line was completely new to me. I had no idea what the product line actually did. So I did agree to take the job on, and it was actually a good decision. The team was good. And in our quest to make this part really small, we ended up making it really small with the help of the finite element analysis tool that I knew. And instead of being half the size, we made it 1/6 the size, super tiny. So we won this competition that Motorola sponsored, and we got to compete on a worldwide basis, teams from China and South America, and we went to Wyoming for this competition. So it was a great experience. Also started an MS in computer science. I wanted to learn a little bit about software. And then about 4 years into that job, Motorola, the business was changing, so they said, well, we're going to sell this division that I work for to a company called CTS. And it was a much smaller company. It really wasn't my decision whatsoever to be part of CTS. But I stayed on about a year, and then I decided, this isn't really for me. So I was hired by a company called Netcom, and we made these military radios. Netcom did mostly high frequency RF products, MRI machines, things of that nature, filters. And I was the only mechanical engineer in the whole company, and my entire team was double E's. But we were very successful in making that radio, which was a brand new sort of product line for Netcom. And along the way, I became chief engineer and really, really enjoyed that experience. So my takeaways from that experience was teach others who want to learn. Some people don't want to learn, but those who do, take the time in your busy careers to help them, with the new products or whatever they're struggling with. It's important. And definitely try to have fun, especially when things are not going well. Sometimes you feel like, things are overwhelming, but have some fun with it. It's not going to be terrible forever. So, try to ride the wave and find the fun in the work you're doing. Don't be a corporate lemming. So I use this term a lot, and corporations will push you beyond what you maybe want to do. So set your limits and don't go beyond those limits. There was one time where I was asked to, basically told I was going to be moving for 3 months to Canada. And I said, no, I'm not, I'm not doing that. And I said, you're going to have to, and they were like, I said, well, you're going to have to fire me because I'm not moving. So they pushed back, they pushed, and I said, no. And they said, and then they relented. They said, yeah, so, you got to set your limits. Don't do things that you don't want to do. And one other experience I learned at this company was I had some disagreements with the VP, and he was very difficult. Everyone had disagreements with him, but I felt like I had more disagreements with him because he was questioning a lot of the engineering decisions. But as it turned out, I was very honest with him, didn't give him a lot of rosy pictures of things. I was very honest, and I think he appreciated that. And when I was leaving the company, he actually said that he was one of the few people that he actually trusted at the company. So you'd be surprised. Honesty and trust building is really an important part of your career, especially with difficult people. So another chapter, after about 11 years in the Chicago area, my husband again said, hey, I got another opportunity. We're going to move back to Connecticut. So at that time, I was very happy. I wanted to go back to New England where my family was. It was difficult to have, kind of alone with two small children and not really knowing a lot of people in the area. So I was very grateful to move back. Shortly after I moved back, I was hired back at UTC, and we are now called Hamilton Sundstrand. I was able to work on a joint fighter program. I worked on actually harnesses, and it was like those complicated wiring harnesses that went all over the engine. It was a good team. I did want to get back to my roots to alternative energy, however. So I knew they had a division at UTC Power, and I was looking at postings, and I posted for a job there, and I was actually ended up being hired, working on what was called the stationary side of the business, doing large fuel cells. You can see them, actually, they're at the plant in East Hartford, and they have these all over the world. They have some of them in, I guess, in Foxwood Casino. They're literally power plants that are run by fuel cells. After I worked on that for a few years, I was hired onto what was then the transportation side of the business for fuel cell buses. So they made the engine that ran the bus, and that engine was made with fuel cells. I gotta say, that experience was really, really wonderful. The people on those teams, they were the smartest, most dedicated engineers and team I had ever worked with, on both sides, the transportation and the stationary side of the business. Great team, fabulous products. And, the buses, they were only supposed to last for like 3 years. And the engineering work in those buses was so good that even today, which is like over 10 years later, most of those, well, maybe not most, but many of the buses are still operating in the San Francisco Bay Area. So just as a testament to their, dedication to the project. And we had all kinds of problems. It was new invention on the fly while we were trying to ship production products. So it was very challenging. And that kind of brings me to the last bullet here or the first bullet. The things that you work hardest at are the experience that you value most. I got to say, I probably worked the hardest I ever did when I worked on these programs. It was long hours. It was, very stressful because things were, at some points, we just weren't working at all. And people wanted answers. And so it was stressful. But it was really, again, whatever you put into it, you'll get back. And then the other part of it is to keep in touch with your friends and former colleagues. They're your most valuable assets, both from a networking and from a friendship perspective. And that brings me to the next bullet. When things are just right, they often change. What happened is California UTC was, considering selling the business for quite some time, and a California company ended up purchasing the UTC Power, and they decided they didn't want to be part of I'll call it the transportation side of the business. They only wanted to be part of the stationary side of the business. So everybody on the transportation side of the business was laid off. So that was really a shock, I'll say. But shouldn't have been a shock, but it was a difficult point in that everybody, all your friends and everybody you worked with were all going in all different directions after that. However, thanks to a manager that I had, she was really great, and she arranged for me to stay on with the company and to close down the transportation side of the business. My job was to find other companies to take over the contracts that we had for the bus business and a couple other businesses, and also to sell the assets that we had accumulated in those programs. I finished that in about 3 or 4 months, and then was hired back to UTC Airframe Products business by a former colleague that I had worked with. Actually, he was a manager that I once worked for. So, and this group that I'm currently with, we work on electronic assemblies, a lot of printed wiring board and assemblies that are used in military and some commercial aircraft. During my time in the last couple years, I got my 4th patent, and I am currently a chief project engineer, as you heard, for a team of people. My customers include Boeing, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, all the big, I'll say, aerospace military companies. And one of the pleasures of my career really has been in being able to join the Girls Inc. of the Valley, which is as the board of director. And that organization, and you'll hear a little bit more about that, is a great organization that tries to promote girls in STEM. So a few nuggets to take away from my experience at Airframe Products is find a team and a supervisor that you like and can learn from. And you're your own best cheerleader. When things are down and you're kind of not feeling the love, you're great. So, tell yourself that you can do this, and, don't always look to others to affirm what you're about. Just, think about the things that you're successful and go with that. Support organization that you believe in and are effective. Again, that's kind of my work with Girls Inc. It's a great organization. It's very effective. And be generous with your time and money. As engineers, sometimes you feel like you're too busy to do things, but be generous with both time and money on the causes that you believe in. And bottom line, it all works out. So celebrate change, because change is going to happen to you, whether you like it or not, whether it's your doing or somebody else, causing you to change. So celebrate change. And my last slide is sort of preparing for that change. here's what you need to pack in your suitcase. Lots of marketable skills. Make sure you get trained in areas that are current. Get trained in new skills, cross skills. Everything that you can latch onto is really what you need in that suitcase. Because at the end of the day, it's you're a corporation of one. It's just you. So make sure you have a suitcase full of marketable skills. The other thing you need is a great network and support system. That is essential for any change you're going to find in your career. Stay curious and be flexible. Don't be kind of rigid about what you can and can't do or want or don't want. Try to be flexible, because if you're not, you may miss out on some great opportunities. Be happy, be confident. Hey, you got to be where you are. Make sure you show that confidence, and be self-aware. What brings you real job satisfaction? Is it new products? Is it people? Is it money? Is it notoriety? Whatever it is, try to know yourself and choose things that satisfy what you're really all about. And my last slide is to sort of talk about this Eureka. If you haven't heard about it, the Girls Inc. organization is a wonderful organization promoting inner city. Usually it's inner city programs are usually in the larger big cities across America. And it's for girls that normally would not hear about STEM, and it's to try to both educate and to prepare young girls for careers in STEM. And the one that I'm involved in, they actually have summer programs that they spend the entire summer. They bus them up to, in this case, to UMass for 4 weeks. And they do experiments and all kinds of one-on-one activities with professors and grad students. Is a great program. So seek out those, I'll say, organizations that you can support, and make sure you spend the time to research them and make a difference. And that's all I have.
Thanks so much, Eileen. It was really a fantastic journey going along with you and bopping around from the East Coast to the Midwest and then back again. So I do encourage those that are on the line to drop their questions in the Q&A box. I do have a couple that are lined up. So while we're waiting, I'd like to just take the floor and ask them myself. I also do want to acknowledge that Suzanne Parker, Executive Director of Girls Inc. of the Valley, is also on the line. So thank you, Madam, for joining. And I'm sure there's others a part of the organization that are present with us live here. Eileen, you had talked about, you made the point about self-affirmation, and I just want to have a point of reflection in my own career, because I had that, right? I was starting to feel itchy about 5 to 6 years in as a research scientist, like, where am I going? And turning the mirror inward and making sure that you are truly building yourself up, eliminating all imposter syndrome, negative self-talk. It's been a charge of mine to, go into, educating young women and share it. It's all about being honest and real and sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I wanted to thank you for really just bringing your truth here today. So your career has spanned more than 3 decades, and you've bopped around from place to place. And now we're in the midst of also continuing to thrive or survive in a global pandemic. So I'm wondering if you could talk about, you've touched upon your journey through your career and raising young children and navigating through change. How is work-life balance for you now, even in the midst of a pandemic? And where do you see it going? Is it clearly, hopefully we're all in a better place and the movement is progressive, but I wonder if you could touch upon that.
Sure. I have to say the work life, so I'm kind of at the tail end of my career versus a lot of people who are, I'll say, in the middle with young children. I mean, I really kind of feel bad for people who over the last year or so, especially moms who are at home trying to teach their kids at home. Oh my God, how they did it, with all the work pressures, where I'm on calls every half hour. So for me, it was easy. My kids are all grown, all off and doing their own thing. So for me, it's been really, I'll say, kind of an opportunity again to work at home and be a little more flexible, get some more exercise, go out for a walk. So for me, it's been great. But I really feel for those young families that are, especially women. I mean, the struggles they've had to go through in the last couple of years have been really rough. So I give them all the credit in the world for getting through, the learn at home phase, and so easy for me was the answer.
Yeah, it was also easy for me too, because my husband and I do not have children. So quarantine and working from home didn't feel, like any other challenge, but certainly recognizing and understanding that we as women take full responsibility mostly in our lives, both professionally and personally. And so hopefully through your words and insight and being really within these larger organizations, there are employee resource groups, there's affinity groups, there's, you've talked about the importance of creating relationships that are sustainable with your colleagues. So, brighter days are ahead, and kudos to everyone that survived through being a working woman and are not yet a part of this she session. So I'm hopeful of the future, and we will come back as women in this profession and across all professions, really, with roaring success and drive. And I'm very passionate about this space. I see a question that has come up from Carol, so thank you. If there was one skill set you would have developed earlier in your career, which would have served you better, what might that be?
Well, I probably, I really did like electrical engineering. My degree was in mechanical engineering, and I think that, well, first of all, there's fewer women in electrical engineering, and it was always sort of, I steered away from it because it was a little bit unknown. I didn't really have any electrical experience, but it was also a little, it had the reputation as being really hard. But, it really isn't that hard. So, I mean, it's one of the harder disciplines, but, if you work at things, you can succeed. So I would say I probably would have, I won't say I would have gone into it in my, as a undergrad, but I might have. If I knew a little bit more about what Double E was all about, I might have. So, but, I got there eventually, so that's what matters.
Thanks for that. You had mentioned during your talk about volunteering for new assignments. And so typically women in a room full of men or on a team mostly of men would be, given all of this secretarial or administrative tasks, like all of the things that really aren't strong technically or have high visibility. And I've heard you touch upon that. And certainly you don't become a chief engineer without having really the opportunity to flex your technical leadership muscles. So I'm wondering if you could speak to, how it has been for you, and even currently with some of the younger women that you find on your teams. So many corporations now are talking about diversity, equity, inclusivity. What is the current litmus test for where things are at now? And also, any other advice about volunteering and raising your voice for things that are, worrisome, but also taking on new challenges?
Well, I mean, everybody's got a different approach to things, but I'm pretty straightforward with people, and if I feel like I'm not getting the assignments I signed up for, I'll just say, look, this is what I want. You gotta just be straight up and say, this isn't what I signed up for, or hey, how come, why aren't I getting the assignment? And, it's okay to make people a little uncomfortable if you, stand up for yourself is the bottom line. I have to say, I never really had, on the volunteer projects I were on, even way back in the day, they were pretty technical. And if you were good technically, there really wasn't like, I didn't feel like people were trying to, they valued your technical abilities more than anything else. So I think in a really technical way, it's sort of an equalizing effect, is that if you're doing technical work and that work is valued, it kind of levels everything out.
That's great. Especially being in an engineering, technology, aero defense, really any industry sector, that's critical to make yourself visible and or to, go to others that you aspire to be like, within the organization and use them as allies. So oftentimes there might be younger, early career professionals that may not feel necessarily that they can raise their voice or they're not going to be seen. So that's why mentorship and sponsorship is so critically important. And I want to thank you for, being that see her, be her for all of those young girls that are in Girls Inc. and certainly within Collins Aerospace. I'll take a pause for another question if there is one from our general audience, but otherwise, as we're maybe closing in on the quarter mark, any final words of advice or thoughts that you'd like to, say as a champion for women and girls, and final closing remarks?
Well, just don't be afraid of change, embrace change, and explore new things always.
That's great. Eileen, thank you so much for your presentation, your time and your energy, and certainly your dedication to empowering young women and girls in STEM. So with that, we'll turn the floor back over to Elizabeth.
Thank you. And thank you, Eileen and Jackie. That presentation is really inspiring for present and future women in the STEM with some really good advice. We're going to have it posted on our website. We're also going to send a link to the recording to all attendees along with the slide deck. Please mark your calendars for our next Women of Innovation webinar, Tuesday, December 14th at noon, featuring Andrea Kozala, Assistant Professor in Biomedical Engineering at Western New England University. She's a winner in finalist rather in the post-secondary category of the 2021 Women of Innovation. Thank you all for attending today.